The quiet hum of the UNSS Curiosity was a familiar sound. It was the sound of machines keeping people alive in the endless dark, the sound of data flowing, the sound of patient work. Captain Lee Min-soo liked it. It was honest. He sipped his lukewarm coffee and watched the starfield on the main viewer. It was his third year on this deep-range survey mission, and the most exciting thing they'd found so far was a nebula that looked, unfortunately, like a duck. "Captain," said Commander Park Ji-hai from the science station. Her voice had a certain tone. It was the tone that meant the quiet was about to end. "We're getting a new gravitational signature. It's big, and it's moving fast." Min-soo put his cup down. "Origin?" "From beyond the Tycho anomaly. It's on a direct intercept course, not a natural trajectory." A slow, careful breath. First contact protocols, drilled 1,000 times, began to tick over in his mind. He tapped the ship-wide com. "All hands, this is the captain. We have a potential first contact situation. Assume protocol positions. No sudden moves. Specialist Yuna, open the standard greeting packet. All frequencies, but do not transmit until I say so." The crew moved with calm efficiency. Dr. Kim Tae-yeon, the anthropologist, practically vibrated with excitement as he slid into his station beside Ji-hai. The young communications officer, Choi Yuna, her fingers flying over her console, nodded. "Packet is ready, sir. All standard peace and hail frequencies." On the viewer, the starfield wavered. Then it was replaced by the ship. It was massive, a jagged silhouette of dark metal and sharp angles against the stars. It looked less like a vessel and more like a piece of ancient, angry architecture that had decided to go for a swim in space. A low, sub-audible hum began to vibrate through the Curiosity's deck plates. "Power readings are off the scale," Ji-hai reported, her voice tight. "Weapons? I can't even tell what's a weapon and what's just decoration. It's all spikes." "Incoming transmission," Yuna said. "It's powerful, broadcasting on a wide band. It's not a request. It's a broadcast signal, like a general announcement." "Put it through," Min-soo said, straightening in his chair. The screen flickered. The image that appeared was not a live feed. It was a recording of stunning clarity. An alien filled the screen. It was reptilian, with scales the color of tarnished bronze, and it wore an elaborate suit of armor covered in strange, swirling insignia. Its eyes were yellow and unblinking. Its voice was a deep, synthesized boom, translated instantly by the ship's computers into clear, overly formal English. "Peoples of the unknown reaches, hear the voice of the glorious Cathar Imperium. Your cycle of isolation ends. You now exist under the benevolent shadow of the Empire." Min-soo raised an eyebrow. "Benevolent shadow?" That was a new one. The recording continued, listing terms with solemn grandeur. "All sentient species shall adhere to universal constants of submission. Upon first contact, the posture of prostration, level 3-4 head to floor. Hands extended is mandatory for all communications." From the science station, Dr. Kim Tae-yeon made a small, choked sound. Min-soo glanced over. The scientist's face was red, his hand clamped over his mouth. The alien on screen went on. "The linguistic honorific Von must append all references to the Imperium or its agents. All military assets are to be disarmed and surrendered within one standard. Cycle, a tribute of 80% of planetary. Resources and manufactured goods is to be paid annually. Resistance is illogical. Submission is order." The recording ended. The screen went dark for a moment. The silence on the Curiosity's bridge was absolute, thick with the weight of the moment. Then the screen lit up again, this time with a live feed dot, It was the same alien, in the same armor, but now in a different, more austere setting. It stared directly out at them. "I am Harold Vox, speaker for the Imperial Will. You have received the proclamation. Your species designation is humanity. You will now comply. Disable your engines. Open your data cores. Assume the posture." Captain Min-Su just looked at the creature. It was utterly serious. The sheer, unshakable certainty of it was staggering. He had imagined first contact 100 ways wonder, terror, a difficult exchange of mathematics. He had never imagined this. A galactic tax, collector with delusions of grandeur. He slowly turned his head to look at Commander Ji-Hai. She met his gaze, her own expression one of pure, unadulterated bewilderment. Min-Su's lips twitched. He leaned slightly toward her and said, in a low, conversational Korean, "Ji-Hai, does this remind you of anything?" She blinked. "Sir?" "The historical drama. The one about the Goryeo general. The one with the terrible, pompous villain who spent 10 episodes listing the taxes on turnips before anyone even fought him." A snort came from the communication station. It was a small, sharp, utterly human sound. Specialist Choi Yuna had her head down, her shoulders trembling. She had been trying to decode the secondary data in the transmission, but the phrase "Prostration Level 3" had just flashed on her screen in official imperial glyphs, complete with a little diagram. A juxtaposition of that deadly serious, galaxy-spanning threat with what looked like an instruction manual for yoga was too much. The snort escaped before she could stop it. Dr. Kim Tae-yeon lost his battle next. A giggle, high and helpless, burst from him. He tried to turn it into a cough, but it was no use. The tension on the bridge, wound as tight as a spring by the massive ship and the dire threats, had found a release valve. The absolute, comic book villainy of the demands, delivered with such profound self-importance, was simply ridiculous. Harold Vox's image on the screen remained motionless, but a slight twitch ran through the bony ridge above its eye. Captain Min-Su looked back at the alien. He thought of the history of Earth, the pharaohs demanding to be gods, the emperors declaring themselves sons of heaven, the dictators with their mile-long titles. Humanity had a long, bloody practice with this sort of thing. They had fought it, died for it, and eventually they had learned to laugh at it. This wasn't a new monster. It was a very old one in a fancy new suit. A slow, dry chuckle escaped Min-Su's lips. It was a quiet sound, but on the silent bridge, it was like a gunshot. "Prostration level 3, he murmured in English, shaking his head. "I have a bad knee, Harold. Would level 2 be acceptable? Maybe just a very deep bow?" The dam broke. Commander Ji-Hai let out a short, sharp laugh. Specialist Yuna gave up entirely, her face buried in her hands as her body shook. Dr. Kim was wheezing, tears in his eyes. Pointing weakly at his screen with a schematic for proper forehead to floor positioning was still displayed. It wasn't mean laughter. It wasn't the laughter of bravery or defiance. It was the pure, involuntary laughter of humans confronted with something so pretentious, so theatrically over the top, that it short-circuited fear and landed directly in the realm of farce. On the view screen, Harold Vox's confusion was morphing into something else. His yellow eyes widened. The scales around his neck seemed to tighten. He had delivered this proclamation to 17 species. He had received terror, desperate bargaining, instant surrender, and once a futile but heroic attack. He had never, in all his cycles of service, received this cacophony of strange, rhythmic, baring of teeth vocalization. The humans on the strange, smooth ship were laughing. His grand, imperial mind could not process it. The translation matrix assured him the sounds corresponded to expressions of extreme amusement. But that was impossible. The proclamation allowed for no such reaction. It was a violation of reality itself. With a stiff, jerky motion, Harold Vox reached forward off-screen. The transmission from the mighty Cathar flagship cut off abruptly, leaving the Curiosity's bridge staring at a silent, static-filled screen. The laughter slowly died down, replaced by gulps of air and wiping of eyes. The massive, spiked ship still hung ominously in their viewer. Captain Minsu took a deep, steadying breath, the ghost of a smile still on his face. "Well," he said, his voice calm in the returning quiet, "I don't think that went the way they expected." He turned to Choi Yuna. "Specialist, record a log entry. First contact with the glorious Cathar Imperium. Initial negotiations were informal." He looked back at the menacing ship, his expression turning thoughtful. The laughter had been real, but the problem was now very real too. They had just laughed in the face of an empire. He wondered what the empire did when its subjects refused to read from its script. The silence after the laughter felt heavier than the silence before it. The monstrous Cathar ship was a dark blot on the main viewer, its spires and angles seeming to suck in the starlight. No new messages came. No weapons powered up. It just hung there, a silent, confused giant. Captain Lee Min-soo ordered the Curiosity to hold position. "Do not make any moves. Do not power weapons. Keep our shields at minimal, just for micro-debris. Let's look passive." He stood up. "Senior staff, conference room, now." The air in the small conference room was thick. Commander Park Ji-hai sat with her hands flat on the table, her face serious. Dr. Kim Tae-yeon, though no longer laughing, still had a strange light in his eyes, the look of a scientist who has just been handed a priceless and bizarre puzzle. Specialist Choi Yuna looked a little embarrassed, her cheeks still flushed. Major Park Dae-jung, the head of security who had arrived from the lower decks, just looked grim. He had missed the laughter and had only felt the ship-wide tension. "Report," Min-soo said, taking his seat. Yuna spoke first. "The broadcast we received was a general signal, sir. It's repeating on a loop. It wasn't just for us. It's a recorded announcement they play for everyone. Like a welcome to the Empire message." "And the live one? Harold Vox?" "That was a direct hail. It cut off from their end. They've gone quiet. No scans, no active targeting that I can detect. They're just watching." Major Dae-jung leaned forward. "Captain, with respect, what happened?" The crew was talking about laughter. Min-soo nodded. "We laughed, Major. They delivered an ultimatum demanding we put our foreheads on the floor and give them 80% of everything. It was absurd." "Absurd or not, that ship is a battleship," Dae-jung said, pointing a thumb at the viewer on the wall, which showed the menacing vessel. "Its power output is an order of magnitude greater than ours. Its mass suggests armor we can't scratch. Absurdity does not stop a plasma beam." "You're right," Min-soo said calmly. "But reacting to absurdity with the seriousness it demands can be a trap. Dr. Kim, you're the cultural expert. What are your thoughts?" Kim Tae-yeon straightened up, his academic tone taking over. "It's fascinating. They didn't open with a scan, or a scientific query, or even a simple hello. They opened with a finished product. A complete social contract. This is the universe. You are at the bottom. We are at the top. Perform these rituals. It's not just a demand for obedience. It's a demand for performance." He brought up the recording on the table's central screen, freezing on Harold Vox's stern face. "Look at the armor, the insignia, the booming voice. the specific posture levels. This is theater. Highly developed, ritualistic theater. I believe they operate on what I'd call a principle of sufficient intimidation. Ji-hai raised an eyebrow. Explain. Everything they do, their ship design, their language, their demands is calculated to overwhelm. To create such a sense of scale, power, and inevitability that resistance seems not just futile, but disrespectful to the natural order. They want you to feel small. Not just defeated, but properly subjugated. It's a cultural technology as important to them as their engines. Major Daejong frowned. So they're bullies. More than bullies, Taeyan said. They're bureaucrats of dominance. The ritual is the point. By performing the prostration, by using their honorifics, you are not just surrendering your resources. You are validating their entire worldview. You are agreeing to be an actor in their play. Min-soo leaned back, stroking his chin. And what happens when an actor refuses to read his lines? Or starts laughing at the script? That is the question, Taeyan said, spreading his hands. I do not think their script has a stage direction for it. Our reaction was, in a very real way, outside their reality. Choi Yuna spoke softly. It's like if a king used to everyone kneeling just saw someone give him a friendly wave. He wouldn't know what to do first, get angry, or figure out what the wave meant. Precisely, Taeyan said, pointing at her. Major Daejong was not convinced. This is all very interesting, but we need a military assessment. They are confused now. That is a temporary advantage. When they decide to move from confusion to anger, they will swat us like a bug. We should send a formal, respectful message. Clarify that there was a translation error, a cultural misunderstanding. Buy time for the fleet to respond. Min-soo looked at Ji-hai. Your analysis? She had been studying the tactical data. The Major is correct about their physical power. One ship-to-ship engagement can we lose. But Dr. Kim is also correct about their confusion. Their passive sensors are still active, but they are not preparing for a fight. They are analyzing. She tapped her screen. I think they are trying to recategorize us. We are not fitting the model of submissive species. A sharp tone came from the console. Yuna listened to her earpiece. Captain, incoming tight beam transmission. From the flagship. Audio only. Put it through here, Min-soo said. The voice of Harold Vox filled the room. The grand, synthesized boom was still there, but underneath it was a new tension, a tightness. Creature designated Captain Lee Min-soo. Your prior auditory emissions were disruptive. The Imperium attributes this too. Primitive neurological malfunction or insufficient translation protocols. You are granted a single cycle for correction. You will re-establish communication. AND, perform the required posture. This is a final concession. The transmission ended. Auditory emissions, Ji-hai repeated dryly. He means our laughing. Primitive neurological malfunction, Taeyan said, a smile tugging his lips. They think we're broken. Or stupid. Major Daejong saw an opening. Captain, this is our chance. We send a message of apology. We explain it was a malfunction. We comply, just enough to make them stand down. It's the only logical move. Min-soo was quiet for a long moment. He looked around the table, at Daejong's tactical pragmatism, at Taeyan's fascinated curiosity, at Ji-hai's cool analysis, at Yuna's nervous hope. He thought not about the immediate danger, but about the future. If humanity's first interaction with a galactic power was to pretend to be broken, to fake a bow, it would set a precedent that could last for centuries. They would enter the galactic stage as actors in the Cathar play, forever in the role of the subdued. No, Min-soo said finally, his voice quiet but firm. We will not apologize for our laughter. And we will not perform. Captain, Daejong began. Minsu held up a hand. We will not fight them either. Not with weapons. We will communicate. But we will do it on our terms. We will show them we are not broken. We are not confused. We understood them perfectly. And we found it funny. He turned to Choi Yuna. Specialist, you are good with patterns, with data. I want you to put together a response package. Not text, not an apology. Send them video files. Video, sir? Yuna asked, confused. From our cultural archives. Clips. Find me. The most over-the-top, dramatic, pompous performances from our history. Shakespearean actors declaiming to the heavens. Speeches from dictators who thought they were gods. Satirical news sketches where people mock tyrants. Even blooper reels. Moments where the grand performance falls apart and the actor laughs. A slow grin spread across Kim Tae-yeon's face. He understood. Ji nodded slowly, seeing the strategy. You're not saying no. You're giving them a cultural mirror. Exactly, Minsu said. We send them this package with a single, clear text question. Make it plain. Ask them, is this level of performance a required standard for all tributary species? Major Dae-jung stared. You're going to send them bloopers? I'm going to send them the context they lack, Minsu corrected. They think their theater is universal. We are going to show them we've seen this play before. We know all the acts. And we know how it ends. The room was silent again, but the tension was different now. It was the tension of a gamble, not of a siege. Do it, Specialist Yuna, Captain Minsu said. And when you send it, open it on a wide band. Let any ship in the area hear our question. Let's see how the Empire handles a little review of their performance. The video package was sent. The Curiosity waited. Captain Minsu had ordered the crew to proceed with normal, calm duties. The idea was to project an image of unshakable routine, as if receiving galactic ultimatums was a minor Tuesday annoyance. Inside, every nerve was stretched tight. Specialist Choi Yuna monitored the communications array. No direct response to the video feed, Captain. But there's a huge increase in data traffic between the flagship and the other Cathar vessels. They're talking about us. A lot. Dr. Kim Tae-yeon watched the social analysis graph spike. They're debating. Arguing, maybe? Our transmission wasn't just ignored. It's caused a discussion. That's a very good sign. Or a very bad one. 27 hours after the laughter, the response came. It was not a hail, but a ship movement. One of the smaller spike destroyers detached from the main Cathar fleet. It did not move toward the Curiosity. Instead, it turned and accelerated toward a small, rocky asteroid on the edge of the system. A dim, blinking beacon identified it as Asteroid Outpost Theta 7, a fully automated human mining station. They're moving on Theta 7, Commander Ji reported, her voice sharp. On the main viewer, a tactical overlay showed the destroyer's path. It was heading for a slow, obvious intercept. Hail them, Minsu ordered, his calm demeanor solid as a rock. Yuna worked her console. No response. They are receiving, but not answering. A new window opened on the screen. It was Harold Vox. His reptilian face was harder to read now, but the yellow eyes gleamed with a colder light. He did not wait for them to. Speak. The Imperium has judged your transmission as deliberate. Irreverence. The concept of performance is irrelevant. The Imperial will is reality. You require a demonstration. You will observe the consequences of defiance upon one of your own assets. Then you will comply. The transmission cut. They're going to blow up the mining outpost, Major Dejong said flatly. A show of force. Standard intimidation escalation. Can we get a warning to the outpost? Min-Su asked. Ji-Hai shook her head. It's automated. Only a skeleton maintenance crew visits once a year. There's no one to warn. Just drills, processors, and a lot of rock. Min-Su's jaw tightened. They were going to destroy a piece of human property, unprovoked, just to make a point. The laughter was gone from the bridge now, replaced by a cold, quiet anger. Move us to a safer distance, but keep us in visual range, he ordered. I want to see this. Record everything. Every weapon signature, every energy spike. The Curiosity shifted gently on its thrusters, putting more space between itself and the impending destruction. The crew watched, helpless, as the Cathar destroyer settled into a stationary position relative to the asteroid. The outpost was a tiny, fragile collection of modules and gantries clinging to the rock. A blinking light its only sign of life. A visible energy beam. A searing line of crimson light lanced out from the destroyer. It was silent in the vacuum, a silent finger of death. It struck the central structure of the outpost. A flash of light. A bloom of expanding gas and debris. And then, a voice dot, it crackled over the general operations frequency, the channel used by all human facilities for basic chatter and emergencies. It was a live human voice, filled not with terror, but with pure, convoluted irritation. What in the seven hells was that? Who just shot my junk pile? On the bridge of the Curiosity, everyone froze. The voice continued, a man's voice, rough with static and annoyance. This is Outpost Manager Quan Suman of Theta 7, who just declared war on my scrap metal. Identify yourself. Captain Min-Su's eyes went wide. There's someone there? Ji-Hai was already pulling up the manifest. He's not scheduled. He must have flown out on a private cutter for an unscheduled systems check. His personal transport is probably docked on the far side. On the screen, the visual of the explosion cleared. The brilliant, precise beam had not hit the main habitat or the primary drill. It had struck a secondary storage yard, a collection of empty cargo containers, discarded hull plates, and a decommissioned ore processor. A junk pile, exactly as Manager Quan had called it. The main structures of the outpost were scorched but intact. The Cathar beam had aimed for the most prominent structure, assuming it was critical. They had vaporized garbage. Harold Vox's face reappeared on a split screen, looking expectant, waiting for the human's horror. At that moment, Quan Suman's irritated face popped up in another window. He was a man in his 40s, with a practical buzz cut and a face that looked permanently windblown. He was not looking at the Cathar ship. He was looking at a damaged sensor feed from his own outpost. Unbelievable. He grumbled, his voice clear on the open channel the Curiosity was monitoring. Do you have any idea how long the paperwork for unscheduled debris field creation is? I've got to file a Form DX-12 for unauthorized orbital discharge, a Form H7 for hazardous fragment mapping, and a Form B44 for proprietary mineral loss. And those containers still had serial numbers. This is a nightmare. On the Cathar split screen, Harold Vox's expression shifted. The stern certainty faltered, replaced by a look of profound bewilderment. He was watching the human's live feed, hearing the translated words. There was no screaming, no begging, no acknowledgement of imperial power. There was administrative frustration. A sound started on the bridge of the Curiosity. It began with Commander Ji-Hai. A sharp, disbelieving exhale that turned into a choked giggle. She looked at Captain Min-Su, whose own stern face was crumbling at the edges, his lips pressed into a thin, trembling line. Dr. Kim Tae-yun lost it first. A loud, snorting laugh burst from him. He's worried about the forms. Specialist Yuna clapped a hand over her mouth, but her shaking shoulders gave her away. The sheer, ridiculous disconnect between the Cathar's grand demonstration of will and Manager Kwan's bureaucratic meltdown was too perfect, too hilarious. The dam broke again. This time, the laughter was different. It wasn't the nervous release of the first encounter. It was the hearty, genuine laughter of people watching a spectacular joke the universe had just played. The mighty empire had tried to inspire terror, and had instead inspired a headache about triplicate paperwork. Captain Minsu leaned back in his chair, a full, deep laugh finally escaping him. He waved a hand toward the screen where Harold Vox sat, frozen in cognitive dissonance. He doesn't know what to do. His big punishment. And we get a complaint about filing. Even Major De Jong, the serious soldier, cracked a small, reluctant smile, shaking his head in disbelief. On the screen, Harold Vox's confusion boiled over into anger. This was not in the ritual. The subject was supposed to be cowed, not complaining about administrative procedures. His image leaned forward, and he snarled something in his own language to someone off-screen. On the tactical overlay, the Cathar destroyer's weapons began to power up again. A different array this time. Larger. They're retargeting, Ji-Hai said, her laughter dying instantly. Going for the main habitat. Quan Suman saw it too on his sensors. His annoyed expression didn't change. Oh? You're going for another shot? With that mess you just made? Fine. You just made my whole week. I hope your insurance is better than your aim. The channel went silent as he presumably dove for cover. The mood on the Curiosity sobered. The joke was over. The Empire, embarrassed, was moving to correct its mistake with real, unambiguous violence. They were going to kill a man because he cared about paperwork. Captain Minsu's laughter faded, but the light in his eyes didn't. It hardened into something else, a sharp, calculating resolve. The Empire had shown its hand. They could be flustered. They could be made to look foolish. And when they were, they reacted with clumsy, predictable anger. He's not an actor in their play anymore, Minsu said quietly, more to himself than anyone. He's a stagehand who just told the lead actor his costume is silly. And they don't have a script for that. He sat forward. So let's write a new scene. Right now. The moment stretched thin. On the main viewer, the Kadha destroyer's weapon ports glowed with a menacing crimson light. Power building for a second, definitive strike. The small, fragile outpost modules clung to the asteroid, utterly defenseless. Manager Quan Suman's grumbling had stopped. The open channel was silent, holding its breath. Captain Minsu did not hesitate. The time for analysis was over. The Empire understood only two languages, absolute submission or overwhelming force. He had no interest in the first, and no capacity for the second. So he would speak a third language, one they had no dictionary for. Specialist Yuna, he said, his voice calm and clear, cutting through the tension. Open a wide-band transmission. Broadcast it to the Cathar flagship, the destroyer, the outpost, and on every general frequency. No encryption. I want everyone to hear this. Yuna's fingers flew. Ready, Captain? Minsu took a slow breath. He didn't put on a stern face. He didn't try to match Harold Vox's gravitas. Instead, he allowed a tone of bright, almost cheerful authority to enter his voice. The tone of a man hosting a mildly challenging game. Attention, Cathar Imperial Forces. This is Captain Lee Minsu of the Earth vessel Curiosity. We are receiving your demonstration. Very flashy. On the split screen, Harold Vox's face reappeared, a flicker of surprise at the casual address. We see you're retargeting, Minsu continued, as if commenting on the weather. Trying for a better score, are we? Well, let's make this interesting. Let's have a proper test. He nodded to Yuna. A new data packet, prepared in the frantic seconds before, shot across the void. We've just sent you the public, freely available schematic for a standard Mark IV asteroid mining outpost. Nothing classified. You can download it from our public net, actually. On the bridge, Commander Jihai was already highlighting a specific system on the schematic. She sent the highlight to Minsu's screen. Now for your second attempt, Minsu announced, his voice taking on the cadence of a game show host. Your objective is to disable the outpost's primary thermal heat exchanger. That's the big unit under the clearly marked blue panel on the northwest face. You'll see it on the schematic we just gave you. Let's see if you can hit the actual target this time. He leaned slightly toward the screen, his eyes glinting. Bonus points for speed and precision. But remember, contestants, he held up a finger, safety first. We wouldn't want any more unnecessary paperwork. A stifled snort came from Dr. Kim Tae-yeon's station. On the viewer, the power buildup in the Cathar destroyer's weapons stuttered. The crimson glow didn't fade, but it stopped its steady increase. The ship seemed to hesitate, hanging in space like a confused predator dot in the corner of the screen. Harold Vox's image was a study in paralyzed outrage. His mouth opened, but no translated words came. The human was not begging, nor was he issuing a military challenge. He was giving them instructions. He was turning a sacred punitive action into a task. A game. With bonus points. Minsu kept talking, filling the silent channel with his absurd commentary. We'll be judging based on 3 criteria: accuracy, collateral damage control, and style. That first shot? Low marks, I'm afraid. Very high on collateral, very low on accuracy. Style was explosive but unrefined. On the Open Operations channel, a new voice crackled. It was Kwon Sumin. He had clearly been listening. Style? Are you kidding me? They shot my recycler's spare parts. That's not style, that's vandalism. The combination of the captain's playful officiating and the outpost manager's indignant critique was too much. On the Curiosity bridge, the crew broke. The laughter this time was not a release of tension, but a wave of pure, shared delight. They were watching the might of an empire being heckled. Specialist Yuna laughed so hard she had to hold on to her console. Major Dejun, the soldier, simply put his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking. The situation was the most insane tactical scenario he had ever witnessed. The Cathar destroyer did not fire. It hung there, its weapon ports still glowing, but its purpose utterly derailed. The ritual had been shattered. The demonstration of will could not proceed when the subjects were acting as judges and commentators. Harold Vox finally found his voice. It was no longer a grand boom. It was a strained, sharp hiss of translated words. You try to turn imperial might into a diversion. This is blasphemy against order. Order? Minsu replied, dropping the game show host tone for something more genuinely curious. Harold Vox, you tried to destroy a machine shop. You missed. Now you're upset because we're not following the script for our own destruction. That's not order. That's just bad theater. He gestured to the schematics still displayed. The target is clearly marked. The heat exchanger. If you wish to demonstrate your precision, demonstrate it. If not, then we can all stop wasting power on our weapon systems, and maybe have that talk we should have had from the beginning. One sentient species to another. The silence from the Cathar flagship was profound. On the destroyer, the weapon ports finally, slowly, began to dim. The crimson light faded away. They did not fire. The order to turn punishment into a participatory challenge had created a logic loop their rigid command. Structure could not process. To fire, now would be to Except the humans, framing to be a contestant attempting a task. To not fire was to admit the demonstration was over. They chose the only option their paradigm allowed, stasis. Min-Su watched the weapon's power down. He let out a slow, controlled breath he hadn't realized he was holding. G high status of the outpost? Scanning. Minimal damage to primary systems. The habitat is intact. Life signs from Manager Quan are strong. He's yelling about coolant leaks now. But he's okay. The relief on the bridge was palpable. They had not won a battle. They had not fired a shot. But they had stopped one with nothing but words and a refusal to play the expected role. "What now, Captain?" Kim Tae-yeon asked, his voice full of wonder. "They are completely off script." "Now," Min-Su said, watching Harold Vox's frozen, conflicted image, "we wait. We've handed them a new script. It's messy. It's confusing. It has humans laughing in it. Let's see if they're good enough actors to learn new lines, or if they'll just walk off the stage." He turned to Yuna. "Keep the channel open. Keep recording. And send a private message to Manager Quan. Tell him his paperwork complaints just saved his life, and that the Curiosity will cover the cost of any Form B-44 he has to file." A final chuckle rippled through the bridge. The giant, spiked ships of the glorious Cathar Imperium still filled the space around them, powerful and deadly. But they no longer seemed invincible. They seemed, for the first time, strangely silent, and perhaps just a little bit silly. The humans had changed the game, and for the moment, the Empire had no idea how to play. The silence stretched for hours. The Cathar ships did not move. They did not power weapons. They did not send more proclamations. They simply existed, a silent, dark constellation of might and confusion. On the bridge of the Curiosity, the crew maintained their watch, the initial giddy relief hardening into a steady, wary readiness. Captain Min-Su stayed in his chair. He drank another cup of coffee. He reviewed the logs. He waited. He knew the next move had to come from them. You could not rush a paradigm shift. Finally, a signal chimed, soft and distinct. Specialist Yuna listened, her eyes widening slightly. "Captain, incoming tight beam transmission. Source, the Cathar flagship. Audio only. It's marked for your command console only. No broadcast. Put it through to my station," Min-Su said. He put on a headset. The bridge crew watched him, trying to read his face. The voice that came was Harold Vox's, but it was different. The synthesized boom was gone. The tone was lower, flatter. The words were not a declaration. They were a question, simple and bare. Creature designated Captain Lee Min-Su. "Why?" Min-Su leaned forward slightly. "Why what, Harold? Why do you not fear? The proclamation is clear. Our power is evident. The destruction was demonstrated. Yet you emit the sounds of amusement. You give tasks. You speak of style. Why?" There was no anger in the question now. Only a deep, profound confusion. It was the sound of a wall cracking. Min-Su chose his words with care, speaking softly into the microphone. "We saw your power, Harold. We are not blind. Your ship could break mine. That is a fact. But you did not just show us power. You showed us a performance. The armor, the titles, the prostration levels. You did not just want us to obey. You wanted us to perform our surrender in a specific way. You wanted us to agree that your way is the only way the universe can be." He paused, letting the words hang in the void between them. "My species has a long history. We have had our own empires, our own proclamations, our own rulers who demanded foreheads on the floor. We have paintings and poems and stories about them that are thousands of years old. Some of those stories are tragedies. Some are horrors. And some, he allowed a small, warm note into his voice, are comedies. We have learned that when someone insists too much on the performance, it often means they are afraid the performance is all they have. There was a long silence on the other end. Then, Vox's voice again, even quieter. You say you have seen this. Before. We have seen the pattern, Minsu confirmed. The mighty ruler who is fragile inside. It is a very old, very human story. So when we saw it again, here in the stars, we did not see a new terror. We saw a very old one, wearing new clothes. And that is sometimes funny. It is the laughter of recognition, Herald. Not the laughter of disrespect for your engines or your weapons, but for your script. Another silence, longer this time. Minsu could almost hear the gears turning, the rigid structures of thought, straining to accommodate a new idea. Manager Quan, Vox said, the name strange in his translated voice. He spoke of paperwork, while our weapon was aimed. This is not a recognized behavior pattern for subjugation scenarios. Of course not, Minsu said, almost smiling. Because he wasn't in a subjugation scenario. He was in a someone made a mess at his workplace scenario. You were not an empire to him in that moment. You were a nuisance. A very loud, destructive nuisance. He reacted to the reality in front of him, not to the role you were trying to make him play. The concept was clearly staggering. Vox's next words were a whisper. You are saying we failed to make him play the role. You didn't just fail. You never got him to read the script. He was too busy living his own life. And that is what you do not understand about us, perhaps. We are very good at living our own lives, even when empires make proclamations. We plant gardens. We fix machines. We complain about paperwork. And sometimes we laugh. It is how we have survived all our own empires. Captain Minsu took a final breath, offering the idea he had held since the beginning. You can still try to destroy us, of course. We will defend ourselves. It will be violent and sad and a waste for both of us. Or, Herald Vox of the glorious Cathar Imperium, you can do something your records probably show is never done. What? The word was barely a breath. You can ask to talk. Not as master and subject. Not as conqueror and conquered. But as one group of people who have built ships to sail the stars, to another group who has done the same. The first conversation might be. He chuckled softly, honestly, a little awkward. I admit, our diplomats will probably still giggle a little. But I promise you, it will be more interesting, more real. Then another proclamation. The audio channel went dead. Not a sharp cut, but a slow fade, as if the connection had been gently terminated from the other side. Minsu took off his headset. The bridge crew looked at him, their faces full of silent questions. Well? Commander Jihai finally asked. He's thinking, Minsu said. Really thinking. Not strategizing, thinking. Minutes ticked by. Then an hour. The Cathar fleet remained motionless. Then, a new signal. A wide-band, clean signal, but this time it was not a recorded proclamation. It was a simple, unadorned text message, translated clearly on the main screen. It was addressed to the UNSS Curiosity from the Cathar flagship imperative. Query: what is the protocol for? A talk? Captain Lee Minsu looked at the words. He felt a slow, deep smile spread across his face. It was not a smile of victory, but of possibility. He nodded to Specialist Yuna. Open a standard diplomatic channel. Two-way visual. And send a text reply. He dictated, his voice firm and clear. Protocol is simple. We both say hello. We start from there. On the main viewer, the image of the ominous flagship was replaced. Harold Vox appeared again. He was not on a grand command dais. He was in a simpler room, his ornate armor perhaps slightly less rigid. He looked at Min-Su. Min-Su looked at him. Harold Vox did not speak first. He was waiting for a cue that did not exist in his manuals. So Captain Lee Min-Su, a human, began. He gave a small, respectful nod of the head. Nothing close to prostration level 3. Just one person acknowledging another. Hello. Harold Vox, I am Captain Lee Min-Su of Earth. Welcome to our corner of space. There was a long, painful pause. The alien struggled visibly, his jaw tightening. He was fighting against the weight of millennia of imperial tradition. Finally, he gave a stiff, jerky imitation of Min-Su's nod. I am Harold Vox of the Cathar. The titles were there, but they sounded quieter. He did not add Glorious Imperium. It was a start. A tiny, fragile, monumental start. Commander Park Ji-hai watched the silent, powerful fleet on the secondary viewer, then looked back at the simple image of two beings, awkwardly beginning a conversation they had no script for. She leaned back in her chair, a quiet, amazed exhale escaping her. I think, she said to no one in particular, her voice full of wonder. We broke their script. Let's see if they can write a new one with us. And on the bridge of the human ship, there was no laughter this time. Only a watchful, hopeful silence and the first faint sound of a new page turning.